What an amazing weekend of football it was, Dan.
Yes.
Even for you, I think. Even for the Bulldogs. Even though the Bulldogs lost, I think they really like what Mitchell Pearce was saying last week, where they're coming together and it's going to take some time. It really looked like it on...
Yeah, in all honesty, I think, even though they got beaten, I think that was their best performance of the season.
Yeah,
I know they won 2 games. They beat the Titans and they beat the Roosters.
the Roosters.
Titans, the Titans are the Titans this
Yeah.
year. The Roosters, they only played well in the first half. I think the Storm game was their best 80-minute performance of the season. And I think finally, there are real signs of improvement. We might not be seeing it in the wins column just yet, with only 2 wins from 6 so far. But I'm hopeful now that they seem to have found their groove that we're going to see some more wins on the board in the next 6 to 8 weeks or so. I'm still hoping for that. I think that 10-win mark is a good goal for them. I think that's a realistic goal now. And I think it's certainly achievable for the Dogs now.
Do you think it had anything to do with the backline reshuffle?
Well, in all honesty, to be honest, at the moment, Stephen Crichton, he looks like he might be carrying some sort of injury. He does look a bit below his best. I've got to be honest about that. But Connor Tracy at fullback, I think, in all honesty, I think it was a blessing in disguise that Blake Taaffe missed that game, because they got to look at Connor Tracy at fullback. And, gee, he was very impressive at fullback. So, I'm hoping that Serraldo will look at that and go, right, I think we've found our fullback now. And maybe there's the answer, Connor Tracy at fullback. And the beauty of it was it gave Bronson Cherry a run, and Bronson Cherry had a really good game.
He was so good.
And Josh Aloiai, those 3 tries as well. So anyway, good weekend.
That Friday night was just the fullbacks were in both games were phenomenal. It was Kalen Ponga and Joey Manu ran for like 372 metres or something, filling in at fullback for the Roosters. Something ridiculous like that. It was like a NRL record for most metres. I'm just going to do a quick check. 300.
You're talking about the Thursday game. Yeah, it was.
The Thursday game.
Broncos Dolphins was the game after the Dog Storm on Friday.
And then Kalen Ponga had an absolute cracker, and then we come to Friday and we had the Ryan Pappenhausen was on fire against Connor Tracy. Yeah, that's right. It was Thursday, that Knights Roosters game. Man, what a great game! What a great weekend of football.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course the Dragons won. I think the Dragons got the wood on the Tigers.
Yeah, another good win for your boys as well.
They beat them up in the prelims, and Tigers in recent years have kind of had the wood on the Dragons, and the games have been really close as well. Like, I think Tigers have won more, but all of the games have been like 2 or 4 points. But this time the Dragons just actually smashed them.
3-3, you got to be happy with that.
100%.
You would have taken that at the start of the season in a heartbeat after 6
Well, that was all I expected them to win all year. So
you're very happy. So well done to the Dragons. Shane Flanagan's made an immediate impact there, it has to be said.
The Greg Bird concussion thing is a bit contentious. Not Greg Bird, Jack Bird. Jack Bird. Fair enough, he came off for a HIA, and it was deemed a Category 1 by the independent doctor, and there's no appeal for it. They reckon he didn't fail his HIA. And the independent doctor said he did, and during the game there's no grounds for appeal, and then the Category 1 is automatic suspension for 11 days, but you can appeal that. I think earlier in the year one of the other teams appealed it, but it didn't look so bad, like the hit, but then it doesn't matter if it looks bad or not. We had UFC 300 on the weekend, and some of those hits didn't look bad, but they were bad.
Yeah.
But yes, apparently the Dragons are going to appeal the suspension on Jack. Not a suspension, the stand down as well, because they got a tough game this week.
Yeah, well done to the Dragons, and I think we did say on this podcast, we said that we need to just tread a bit carefully on the West Tigers. I think a few people maybe got a bit too carried away with the West Tigers. So, you've always got to be wary of reading too much into results in the first 2 or 3 rounds. You need to let things play out over a longer period
100%.
of time.
And, I think they're really missing Lockie Galvin, the Tigers, which speaks to the Tigers' lack of depth anyway, because, Lockie Galvin was going to be an Australian representative and future immortal 2 weeks ago.
This is why they need Jerome Luai, everybody.
Yeah.
People saying that they didn't need Jerome Luai.
Exactly.
I think it was Paul Kent and I think it was Cooper Cronk.
Yep.
I'm looking at you two saying that after Galvin's great start to the season that they didn't need Jerome Luai anymore. Well, maybe they do need him.
What's happened the last 2 weeks?
I'm pretty sure that they need Jerome Luai this term.
So what's happened the last 2 weeks with the Tigers? They lost against cellar dwellers, the Tigers, and then the week before they lost as well, right?
So they lost to the Dragons on the weekend, and I'm just checking.
And they lost to the Dolphins the week before. Dolphins the week before.
Dolphins, was it? Yeah.
But he's back this week. So then we'll see if that makes an immediate change.
Against, guess who? The Panthers, yeah. So good luck with that.
We'll see if that makes a change and if they play well. But even if they do, that just, as you just said, it proves they need Jerome Luai, because the combination of Luai and Galvin may be their future. And then with backups like Caesar and whoever the other guy is, I can't remember who the other guy is.
This is it. I mean, they need Luai for depth. Having Luai there will give them stronger depth as well.
Exactly.
So that we see that Galvin goes out of the team and they struggle for 2 weeks. So they'll get him back, but it was just extraordinary how Cronk and Paul Kent were saying that they didn't need Jerome Luai.
Yeah, after it was Jaden Sullivan. Jaden Sullivan is Jaden Sullivan is clearly now their backup. Aiden Caesar is getting on, and so the Tigers are going to have Jerome Luai and Lockie Galvin next year, and then Jaden Sullivan as backup. Because at the moment, they try to lose one of their halves, and that's it. They're all gone. But future immortal Lachlan Galvin will be back next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before we get into our rundown, I just want to say well done to Viliami Kikau as well. Every time he touches the ball at the moment, it looks like no one can lay a hand on him. He's getting lots of late offloads away, creating a lot of second phase. He's just so lethal in attack for the Bulldogs, and he just creates so much for them. So it's really good to see him doing well and getting a good run of form going.
So he had that injury last year, and then he came back when the Bulldogs were already out.
Yeah.
And so, there's never going to be any motivation. But now I've clearly got that motivation, and he's back to form, back to the way we all know he should be.
Yes.
But on to our rundown. Mm-hmm. Rabbitohs lost to the Sharks. Jason Demetriou didn't get sacked yet. But they got a bye now. He'll get sacked this week. Come on, man.
Yeah, well, the talk is that he is going to survive until at least their next game against the Storm on Anzac Day.
They had that Mal Meninga talk, right? Yeah, I discussed it last week where I said if I was Ben Hornby, I wouldn't take the job. Because that was their plan 2 weeks ago. Ben Hornby will be the caretaker. But if I was Ben Hornby, I wouldn't take the job unless they brought in someone to come over me and take the record, like Tim Sheens did for Benji Marshall last year. And as soon as they started talking about Mal Meninga, I thought that's what they're doing. Because, even Mal Meninga at Queensland, there was always the rumblings that he didn't really do the coaching and the game planning. It was Michael Hagan, his assistant, who did the actual coaching.
I believe that.
The interchange management and things like that during the game. That was the rumblings. And then Mal was just the guy who brought them all together and stuff like that. And that's why Mal would be perfect for South actually at the moment, to bring all the players together. And then you have someone like Ben Hornby who doesn't have to take the poor record that they're definitely going to have for the year, and he's interim coach, and he can do the game management. But I heard that Mal Meninga, well, he did the I haven't been approached kind of stuff, and he wouldn't backstab someone or come in the back of someone or whatever, and so then their plans fell apart, and that's why Jason Demetriou survives. Not because they don't want to kick him out, but because really, basically they have no one who will take the spot. Because no one wants to come in and even be an interim coach and have that negative record with what's going on over at South now.
Yeah, it's just clearly that there's more to it, as you say. I mean, they were talking about, he survived because South produced a gutsy display because they were reduced to 14 players for 40 minutes, and they only lost 34-22, and apparently that's not that bad. Yeah, no, clearly there's more going on.
Not that bad. Yeah, there's no one, man. I'm telling you, it's because there's no one who will take the job.
Yeah, well, it would have to be, because that line that came out, one of the journalists was saying, they don't need to win, they just need to show something. And then they said, they showed something, they only lost 34-22. Like, come on, you know.
They let in 34 points.
A win's a win and a loss is a loss.
They let in 34 points. The best margin to pick, which is why I'm going quite well in my margin picking, is around 12, right? 10 to 14. Bookies always have it like 0 to 13 is the shortest odds. And basically the Rabbitohs lost by an average amount, 12. But they let in 34 points. And they're, what's it called? They're the worst. They've got the worst against in the league. They've made 196 points. You know what the next highest is?
What's that?
The Titans, who are second last and haven't won a game. They haven't won a game. So Rabbitohs have at least won one. The next highest is the Titans with 146. So 50 points less than the Rabbitohs. They let in 34 points. This bull crap about, they only lost by 12, they put in a gutsy display and scored some points and all that crap, that's nonsense. Because the Sharks actually didn't play very well. I was trying to watch the game. It was a shocker of a game. And in the end, I turned off. No.
It's just, I just don't agree with the decision to keep him on. I think, and look, I know that there were some people saying, but the guy's about to lose his job. And I say, look, there's only 17 of these jobs. They're very difficult jobs to get, and they're even harder to stay in them once you get them. If the guy's been the coach of the South Sydney Rabbitohs first grade team, he's going to find another job, okay? He's not going to be out on the street somewhere. He'll find a job as an assistant somewhere, I'm sure of it. Okay, so this idea that, it's terrible to suggest that he should be sacked. Like, come on, the guy's, and he's been a first-grade coach at a high-profile club. He's going to get another job. So we can put that concern to one side for a moment.
Unfortunately for him, he's the worst coach in the NRL. That's unfortunate, but that's too bad. If you're the worst coach in the NRL, gets sacked every year. Tell me 1 year in the past, we'll go for the NRL, right? 1 year that a coach didn't get sacked. There's none.
It's hard to think of, off the top of your head, it's hard to think.
Even sacked at the end of the year, not renewed, all that. There's always one, and it's always the worst coach. And unfortunately for him, he's the worst of the only 17 people. He's the 17th worst coach. And that's the guy that gets sacked every year.
So we need to keep in mind, and I'm sure they are still last on the ladder.
They are.
The ladder in front of me, I'm sure they're still last. So they're last on the ladder now. This was a team that, and I know Adam Reynolds left at the end of that season, but this was a team that made the grand final in 2021. This was the team that made the preliminary final in 2022. This was the team that led the competition after 11 rounds in 2023. So at that point in time, something significant has occurred. The coach and the players have come to a disconnect at that time, clearly. They only won 4 of their last 13 games last year. They somehow missed the top 8 after leading the competition after 11 rounds, and they've only won 1 out of 6 this year. So that means that they've only won 5 of their last 19 games.
Yeah.
Something significant occurred after 11 rounds last year when they were on top of the ladder. There's been a disconnect between the coach and the players. I don't know if it was the... I don't know if it's... And the coaching staff as well. I don't know if it's the players' fault or if it's the coach's fault. But I do know that it's a lot easier to sack one coach than it is to take a broom through a roster of players.
Oh, yeah, so I was listening to... I can't remember. It was one of the pre-game things, like Anthony Maroon talking about how, he was saying, it's unfair to put it all on the coach. There's 17 guys on the field who have to, they're the ones that are in the end responsible and so on and so forth. And then I think it was James Graham was saying to him, sorry if it wasn't James Graham, I can't remember exactly who. There's so many people on there.
It's hard to remember sometimes.
But the response was they were trying to do the analogy of... if you're a CEO and your company's losing money, they don't fire all the workers, they fire the CEO, right? But I think in this case, so sometimes when people are trying to present points, I think a lot of people go too far for an analogy, And in this case, you don't actually need an analogy. The situation is the analogy. He's the current worst coach in the NRL. That doesn't make him a bad coach. He's the current worst coach in the NRL. His team is... So if you want to do a comparison, just imagine you had a professional sporting association with 17 teams and one of them was coming last. And there was no hope there was nothing good looking at them, and they were previously one of the powerhouse teams. In that kind of situation, you'd sack the coach. And this is the situation. That's it. You don't need an analogy. This is the analogy. Jason Demetriou, unfortunately for him, is the current worst coach in the NRL. Doesn't make him a bad coach. It makes him, in the NRL, the current worst coach. And if you are the current worst coach in the NRL, your job is in danger. If you are a coach of a powerhouse team that has dropped to the bottom of the ladder, so for a team that used to be one of the top 5 teams in the NRL is now the 17th worst team in the NRL, the coach is the one that loses their job. When you go through, and as I said, every year coaches get sacked. When you go through the NRL right now, you can work your way up from the bottom 5. Des Hasler's at the Titans. They're second last. He's not going to get sacked. It's the first year. Cameron Ciraldo's in his first proper year at the Bulldogs. He's not going to get sacked. Adam O'Brien's job is in danger. We'll see how he goes. He was already in danger last year. Flanagan's not going to get sacked. It's his first year at the Dragons. Benji Marshall's not going to get sacked. It's the first year at the Tigers. Brad Arthur is at the Eels. His job is, they've said, it's in danger. So... In these things, Adam O'Brien and Brad Arthur's jobs are in danger, and at the end of the year there may be a review and stuff like that. But there's always one in the middle of the year, and Jason Demetriou is currently that one.
I just don't know. See, if you take our 2 teams, for example, right? So Cameron Ciraldo is the Bulldogs coach, Shane Flanagan's the Dragons coach, right? Our 2 clubs have struggled for quite a while. So it's sort of different. You give Ciraldo and Flanagan the benefit of the doubt, as long as you're seeing a bit of improvement, which I think we are now with both of our teams. You give the coaches the benefit of the doubt in that situation because you weren't really sure where these teams were at. We expected them not to go well. They're not going that well, but they're going okay.
You look at them and see something.
Yeah, exactly. You can see something in both of our teams, right? So because of the struggles of our 2 clubs in recent history, you're willing to give those 2 the benefit of the doubt. But how does Demetriou explain the fact that this team's been in a grand final? They've been in a prelim final. They've then led the competition only last year, halfway through the season. How do you then explain to the owners, and their big boppers, the owners, Russell Crowe, Mike Cannon-Brooks, and James Packer, they're heavy hitters. I don't know how, if Jason Demetriou gets in a phone hookup with those 3, I honestly don't know how he explains himself to them.
That's just the way it is. Look, if the Rabbitohs were coming 13th or 11th, his job would be in danger. But we wouldn't be talking about, he's going to get sacked this week, right? If the Rabbitohs had won a few games and were a bit higher than that, his job would be in danger. And unless they improve throughout the rest of the year, you'd have to say he's going to get the sack at the end of the year. Well, this is what I'm talking about with Brad Arthur and Adam O'Brien. Their jobs are in danger unless the Eels and the Knights really, really improve over the rest of the year. When you get to the end of the year, and if they miss the 8 again, I'd say those 2 team boards are going to be having conversations about are there any coaches on the market? We've got to do reviews and so on and so forth. Over at the Rabbitohs, there's no improvement. So it's time to go now. That's the way the NRL works. And then those owners, the board, they have so many people in charge of football clubs these days. So the owners, the board and stuff can alleviate the fans. Because as soon as you sack a coach, the management is allowed to write that year off. They can sack Jason Demetriou as a saving for themselves. Well, we got rid of the bad thing that was in the club. Like they did at the Bulldogs when Trent Barrett was there. We got rid of the bad thing that was at the club. And then in the middle of the year, and then we'll bring in a caretaker, we write the year off. And then next year we look to fix it a little bit. And then you just give us a couple of years. You know, and that's what the Rabbitohs are in. They're in that situation, and people can go on about how it's like, oh, you know, he's going to lose his job and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way. You don't go into coaching in the NRL unless you are aware.
That's the thing. They all know how cutthroat it is. Being the coach of an NRL team is more cutthroat than being the Prime Minister.
Yeah,
that's how cutthroat the job is.
We've had some pretty...
and that's even saying it after the last decade and a half or so of having a different Prime Minister every year. But this is the job. They know what they're getting into. You know, as a coach, overwhelmingly, the chances are that your coaching career is not going to end well. It's not going to end on high. You're probably going to get sacked. Highly likely that you're going to get sacked. I'll just point out, I think, just to clear up what I was saying before, I think the Dragons are going well this year. 3-3, I think that's really good for them.
I'm happy
Bulldogs
with
it. They're going okay.
They've had 1 week.
Look, 2-4, it doesn't look that good, but I think we are seeing some signs in their performances. But just getting back to South, I think what I would have thought by now is that the players need their... The players at the moment have an excuse. They can use the coach as an excuse. If Demetriou were to be sacked and a caretaker installed, they would lose that excuse. They couldn't blame it on the coach anymore because the coach would be gone. So that's why I would have thought that they would have made this change immediately. I know you were talking about some issues with that transition to Mal Meninga, but I would have just thought, well, look, it'd just be Ben Hornby then. Would just take over for the rest of the year.
Yeah, but he won't. That's what I mean. He didn't want to take it. Apparently, what I hear is he didn't want to take over at the Dragons.
Right.
When, who was at the Dragons? When, not Anthony Griffin, the one before, Mary McGregor was let go. Ben Hornby was offered the position and given the chance to take over, and he didn't want to because he doesn't want a basket case. He's a smart guy, Ben Hornby.
You get an opportunity to coach a first grade team.
You think that.
You don't know when you're going to get
some
one,
people, but some people make that mistake though, right? So you have guys like Steve Price who make that mistake and take over the basket case because they think it's never going to come again, right? But then you look at someone like Cameron Serrato who was offered 4 or 5 times. You know, and then he took he made a mistake too.
But that's the other mysterious thing about Souths is that they're not, on paper, they're not a basket case. If you can get them going, they've got the names there. That's what's so strange about their lack of form.
Well,
they have the team there. It's not as if this roster should not be last on the ladder. Should not be.
But you look at and that's why it is a basket case, because they shouldn't be last on the ladder. And everyone looking outside in right now goes... You know, a lot of the fault is falling on Latrell Mitchell. You know, some would say unfairly because it's only one player, right? But they have the roster to be pushing for the 8 or the 4 or whatever. They're not able to. And the other thing is, no one in the club, none of the players are saying anything. So as a coach looking in, do you really want to go there and go like, what's going on here? And that's what I was saying. Like, some people... Like, that's what I hear about Ben Hornby. He's a real smart operator. He is not going to take over a basket case because he may never get another chance again. He would much prefer to stay on that consistent assistant coach level forever than fail miserably as a first grade coach. Which, you know, it's you can say it's smart, or you could also say, well, you're going to miss out on the next step. But look, Jason Demetriou took over a powerhouse. You know, he didn't take over a basket case. He took over a powerhouse.
Took over a team that had made the grand final.
Yeah, from one of the best coaches ever.
Then made the prelim. Then were leading halfway through last season. Yeah. And then something happened and it's fallen to pieces.
So I guarantee, well, I would assume, I don't guarantee, I would assume that if Ben Hornby had been offered that job instead of Jason Demetriou, he would have taken it. But now I wouldn't... I said like 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, like if I was Ben Hornby, I wouldn't take it, man, because you'll be ruined forever like Steve Price was. Steve Price was given an unfair run. The club didn't trust him. He couldn't. Wayne Bennett took all of the staff, all the players. He was a rookie coach. He couldn't attract staff, which means he couldn't attract players. And then the club took all of the power out of his hands and said to him, even, you know, at the time there was some rumblings like he wasn't picking the team and things like that. So
and with Latrell Mitchell, is it a case of, put it this way, I Do I think that Latrell Mitchell will listen to Ben Hornby? No, I don't. Do I think Latrell Mitchell will listen to Wayne Bennett? Yes, I do. And, you sort of look at that and you go, well, is it not just about, with Latrell Mitchell, is it not just about getting the best out of him? Is it also about getting him not to distract his teammates as well? If Wayne Bennett gets him switched into gear, well, then he's not a distraction for his teammates either. The problem hasn't just been what he's doing. It's been how much he's distracted his teammates and thrown them off as well.
Well, like, now the whole thing is Wayne Bennett's not going back. Like, there's no chance. It's not happening.
Okay. So, that's the thing. I think they need a dominant overlord coach to get the best out of Latrell Mitchell.
I don't know who there is.
If they can't find one, maybe they need to look at letting Latrell Mitchell go. Like, seriously,
that's
we've talked about it. We have talked about it.
That may be the end result.
It may be what they need to do, because he's on $1 million a year, and it's just more. It's more trouble than it's worth at the moment with him.
Yeah, and so we've got Craig Gower coming in this week, probably Wednesday. I'm going to see if I can change the date. And I think we should ask him about Latrell Mitchell.
Yeah, 100%.
We asked Piercy about it, and obviously Piercy's played with Latrell Mitchell and knows him well, and he's going to always back up his friend or whatever. But I think with Craig Gower, we might get a different idea and understanding.
100%. Another journalist, I think it might have been Andrew Webster, said that Meninga has realised that he can't do both jobs, can't do the Australia job and the South job, so he's gone cold on the South job, I believe. I think it might have been Andrew Webster who pointed that out. What are the
tests this year?
Oh, well, the tests, I'd say, if there are tests, they'll be at the end of the season. I don't know if there are any at the end of the season. There might be. But if there are any, they will be at the end of the season.
Yeah, don't know. I don't know.
That's the thing. That's why I don't get why he can't do both. I would have thought he could do both. I think if he's not able to do both, I think that's a bit silly. The Australian coach, it's a job that you're just not called upon very often to do it. They don't play many games. It's not a World Cup year. So I would have thought that Meninga should have been allowed to do both jobs if Souths wanted him.
They haven't even confirmed tests or anything, it looks like, for the end of the year. So,
so I can't work that.
But it could be that he's just looked at it and went, "No, I don't want to go to that."
To be honest, that is according to a journalist.
That.
I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but that was according to a journalist, and I think it was Andrew Webster who said that the other day.
But it could just be he's using it as an excuse, and he's actually looked at it and gone, "I don't want to do that. I totally don't want to do that." And that. So
we've got a situation where Demetriou survives because no one else wants the gig.
If I was Jason Demetriou, I would resign and then see what happened. Because of that, it looks like they can't. They're going around talking to everyone. No one will take the job. They keep saying to Jason Demetriou, your job's safe because you only lost by 12. If I was him, I'd go, oh, man.
I don't know what would that mean for his payout. He's supposed to get a 9-month, $350,000 payout, and I don't know if resigning would jeopardise that. The payout amount.
That was the thing with Trent Barrett, right? He refused to leave. He refused to quit at Manly because he didn't want to lose the payout.
Yeah.
Well, more power to him. Yeah, they signed another coach.
so this Demetriou saga is just going to roll on.
Yep. Continuing with Souths, Brad Fittler's weighed in on Latrell Mitchell's. I like what he referred to them as outbursts.
Yeah.
Latrell Mitchell's outbursts are partially due to what happened with Ezra Mam in Las Vegas. As I was saying to you before, I don't pay that at all. This has been going on with Latrell since last year.
Yeah, and I think that'd be very... If that were the case, that'd be very strange behaviour. I mean, obviously we don't like to see racism in any form. That goes without saying, But why would you care that much about an insult directed at someone else that it would affect you that much? If that was the reason, if what Spencer Leniu said to Ezra Mam at the start of the season to get himself suspended for 8 games, if that's the reason Latrell Mitchell's form's gone off, then that's odd because it hasn't affected Ezra Mam. It hasn't even affected the player who the insult was directed to.
He's playing really, really well.
He's playing well, so it hasn't even affected him, let alone... how are we to believe that it's going to affect another player to this degree?
You know, they have that saying, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And maybe that's the worst thing that's ever happened to Latrell Mitchell. And, you know, people can't judge over how badly it affected him or whatever. But, you know...
But it was happening last year.
Yeah, to keep using it... well, it's not what Latrell Mitchell's saying, it's Brad Fittler. And sometimes Brad Fittler says some funny stuff. But it's more started last year. It started halfway through last year. All right, this kind of thing. That was
when the slide started. They were on top of the ladder and the slide started.
I understand he was affected by it, and it could be that him commenting on it, because Latrell Mitchell seems to pay way too much attention to social media, so him commenting on it at the time had a lot of people messaging him, threatening him, doing the typical coward internet stuff to Latrell Mitchell, and like he didn't talk too much about it, but that could have affected him. So it's like you could say the straw that broke the camel's back. But in reality, South's woes and Latrell Mitchell's being at the centre of South's woes started in round 11 last year.
Yeah, and I think where Fittler had a point was his take on social media, where he said, you know, these guys delve into social media. It takes a lot out of your life. You know, you're looking at what people are saying about you. I think he's 100% right. I think it takes up a lot of energy for these players, having these people commenting on them on social media all the time. I think it would be a lot easier for these players if they were just not on social media, if they just abandoned social media, delete their accounts.
They could use a social media manager, you know, instead. That's one of the things.
Just have employ a club social media manager who looks after the accounts of the players.
Yeah.
And that the manager sees all the hate. The players don't see any of it.
I manage a few social medias now, man, and it's like I've used social media managers before for some of the brands I've managed and things, and you know, one of the we had a social media manager for a separate social media manager, external company for a dating app that we were working on. And, because I was the administrator of the social media account, I would see the terrible vitriol that came through. And that was a company account. I can't imagine. The guy do some funny posts on social media for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I've had people threaten me and stuff before. I just laugh it off. I say to them, just come then. I'll be at ADCC Open on Sunday at the door. I'll see you there.
And I know people say that it's... You know, that's taking the easy option, you know, running away from it, deleting your accounts. But
if it
affects you, I'll tell you what, it saves you a lot of time, a lot of hassle, a lot of energy, a lot of negative thoughts by just deleting these accounts. If you delete the accounts, you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Exactly. But yeah, I don't buy that at all from Brad Fittler.
No.
Meanwhile, after the Raiders game,
this was good.
Ricky Stuart, he had a expletive-riddled
even
press
when he wins, this is what takes place. Yeah.
Expletive-riddled. I forgot. It was really funny because I was reading this morning and I forgot that Des Hasler was at the Titans and just thought he was at Manly. While I was reading, I was 4:00 in the morning, and I thought, why is Des Hasler after commenting on a Raiders-Titans game, and why is Ricky Stuart responding? And then as I was reading, I was like, Titans coach Des Hasler. I'm like, oh, that's right, he was over there. Because there was no way in hell I was ever going to watch that game, the Titans versus the Raiders. But my understanding is actually one of the Titans players came out afterwards and said a lot of the 50-50 calls went against them. And
it was AJ Brimson.
Yeah, that was it. And I thought, that's funny because that's what the Raiders normally say. So maybe the Raiders are finally getting some calls. And then what did Ricky say?
So Hasler, at first Hasler said, I thought the refereeing performance was pretty poor. That was his main quote in the whole thing. And then, so the journalists obviously have, you know, put the bait on the hook, told Ricky what Des said, and then I'll read you some of Ricky's quotes. He says, F me, he's on another planet, mate. And then he says, if he is critical of the 6 agains and the penalty count, he is on another planet. But the way, and he goes on to say, that the Titans were cheats. He says, but the way they cheated when they were standing there with the hand on the ball, holding over the ball, the way they cheated on the ground. If we want to go back to last year or the years we have had, no worries. We will start cheating and wrestling as well. Then he says, I feel sorry for Casey Badger, the referee. The way they were in her face all night, I felt sorry for Casey out there tonight. And then he goes on to say about Hasler, but if he thinks they got hard done by Casey tonight, he is on a completely different planet. So Ricky's always got to get personal, doesn't he? All Des said was just that he thought the refereeing was poor. Sometimes Des just does that because he's thinking about future weeks. If he makes a comment saying the referees were poor, he's hoping that he wins the penalty count in the next couple of weeks. That's all that is. But then Ricky just targets Des personally, like, F me, he's on another planet. That's just a really classless display from Ricky Stuart, and we've become used to that, haven't we?
What's it called? Des Hasler just said exactly the same thing that Ricky Stuart has said for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
For the past 20 years, no matter which there's a bingo card for Ricky Stuart, when his teams are going badly.
Even when his team's winning, he's blowing up. Imagine what he's like when they're losing.
These things is like, we never get the rub of the green. The refs always go against us. All the 50-50 calls go against us. We're obviously not spending our salary cap, and that's why we're losing. Like the Ricky Stuart bingo card. Des has just taken one of the cards out of Ricky Stuart's playbook, and Ricky Stuart's had a whine about it. Like, come on, man.
Why would you, if you've won the game, like Ricky Stuart won the game last night, why would you care enough to bite when you're baited like that by
I thought it was bothered by the fact he only beat the Titans by 1 point.
Yeah, maybe.
It's the closest margin for the Titans all year.
It's a win, but it's not really a win.
It's the kind of thing where it's like, oh God, the cracks are really showing over here. I better distract them. Like,
but just
Titans lost by this year so far 1, 13, 16, 32, 24.
Yeah, so he was probably expecting a bigger margin of win, but just the idea that again, Des never went at Ricky. Des just said the refereeing was poor, and then Ricky's turned it into a personal attack on Des, saying, F me, he's on another planet.
Yeah, I think Ricky's trying to detract from the fact that the Raiders only won by 1. And they won in Golden Point as well. And they won only because the Titans made a mistake and gave them everything went for them in the end. But there was a thing in the stats, which, because as I said, I'm not going to watch that terrible game of football. But what was the thing I saw in the stats when I was looking this morning? The 6 agains, right? Inside 10, the ruck infringements. 4-1, penalties conceded 5-3, inside 10 metres 4-1. So there was 8-1, 6 against, 8 against the Titans, 1 against the Raiders. Which, when there is something like that and the opposing team only has 1, I always think it's weird if I don't watch the game. There was a game earlier this year which everyone was only 1 penalty awarded for one of the teams. That's weird to me. To me, there's no way that it can be that uneven. It should be a little bit closer. But yeah, that's one of the things that really stood out to me in this game.
And then not only that, he attacks Hasler personally, and then he says that they cheated. Like, come on, it's not cheating. It's just gamesmanship. It's not cheating. So he wins the game. Then he accuses the other coach of being on another planet, or F me, he's on another planet. Then he accuses the other team of cheating.
Wasn't he at
this is how he carries on after he wins the game.
Wasn't he at the Eels when they actually breached the salary cap as well?
Well, he was there when they won the wooden spoon.
One of the wooden spoons. I'm sure. Who are the Raiders got next week? Someone tough, right?
They are playing the Broncos Saturday night.
Yeah, they're going to get smashed on Saturday, and then it's going to be a big issue. Yeah, for sure. And he's going to say it's called Des Hasler's fault. Over in the Dragons game, man, this was harsh. Not harsh. So Dave Klemmer, I know he plays he runs the fine line. He's like the Jared Warrior-Hargroves just below the line, whereas Warrior-Hargroves is just over the line. But it was astonishing to me twice. He did very, very dangerous, very, very reckless tackles, and there was no sin bin.
I thought the Flanagan one, he should have gone to the bin for that one.
That was the second one, right? The Flanagan one was the second one.
Or was the Lomax one the second one?
Yeah. Okay, so the Flanagan one was the worst one, much worse, right? And
the
then
Lomax one's
and the Lomax,
minutes
Lomax was after, and that was the thing, right? If he didn't get the sin bin for the Flanagan one, which was much worse, then the Lomax one, because it was his second time, surely he should have got the sin bin, but
maybe they felt like they set the standard by not sin binning him because the Flanagan one looked worse. Maybe they thought, well, if we didn't sin bin him for the Flanagan one, well, seeing as the Lomax one isn't as bad, well, we can't sin bin him for that.
I could see that. I can always see their weird trains of thought, but how many times does he have to do head high?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he should have gone to the bin for the Flanagan one. He should. And
then, they gave Lomax a warning for basically reacting, which was really funny. But it was shocking. I was sitting there watching. Of course, I was watching that one, going, "Well, that's in the bin." Surely that on the Flanagan one. Luckily, Kyle Flanagan was okay, and again had a cracker of a game.
Yeah, going well, Kyle Flanagan. Going very well under his dad's coaching. So Klemmer's avoided a ban. He's been fined, but he's avoided a ban. So he's done well out of that, Klemmer, to avoid any sort of suspension and only get fined and. Yeah, the Flanagan one was awful. Sin binned as well.
The Flanagan one was awful, really, really bad.
He should have gone to the bin. Yeah.
And then Zac Lomax had a cracker of a game too. Man, so he's signed with the Eels now. Just on an aside, he's
That's the thing. You want him to play well, but not too well, don't you?
He's going to the Eels next year, and apparently he'll be going to the centres at the Eels. And if he keeps playing how he is, everybody on the internet's already got him on the wing in Origin. All the fans. It's coming up to Origin. It's only a month away. I think we'll get all of our experts to name their Origin team sometime in the near future.
Yeah, I heard someone, it might have been Matt Russell, the Fox commentator, said the other day, the rule is you can't talk about State of Origin until daylight saving ends. And I thought, okay, I haven't heard that one before.
I'm pretty sure that's wrong.
One to me.
The rule is we must talk about State of Origin from the day it finishes all the way through to the next year to the day it finishes. But you can't talk about rugby league without talking about State of Origin.
People talk about State of Origin in round one.
Yeah.
People don't wait till the end of daylight saving.
We were talking about.
I haven't heard that one before. That was a weird.
Talking about Origin during the Test matches last year, during the Pacific Cup, everyone was. There's always something to talk about with Origin. That's madness. Yeah. Over to the Manly game.
Yes.
Manly. This is one of the funniest things ever. You know who had a draw last year? Manly. You know who had a draw this year? Manly. And the draw from last year with Manly, that was one of the reasons that I thought at the time, we were talking about, they were 1 point behind the bunch of teams that were going to make the 8 over the last 6 weeks, and that could have really eaten at them, and it could happen again this year. But Josh Aloiai was charged with a dangerous contact.
On Sean Johnson's legs.
Yeah.
When Sean Johnson was going for that 2-point field goal from outside the 40. And then Aloiai was penalised for that, and the Warriors got the penalty where the ball landed, and then it was an easy 2 points to send the game in a golden point. There was obviously no scoring golden point, and it was a draw. The team shared the points. Now, a lot of people were blowing up about Aloiai being penalised for that shot on Johnson. A lot of people saying they felt like... Johnson sort of moved his leg into Aloiai to sort of.
He was kicking.
But what? The way that I looked at it, my initial reaction to it was, Josh, don't come in contact with his legs. He's kicking from it, and the stupid thing is, if he lets the kick go, the kick went nowhere near. It's that hard to kick a 2-point field goal from outside the 40. You should just let them kick. Don't make contact with them. They're not going to... Those 2-point field goals are so rare. Like, what, 1 in 10 might go in. You're better off just letting it go. As I said, if he'd let that kick go and not made contact with Johnson, it would have gone nowhere near the posts. So I just thought it was just silly for him to make contact, and then he gives away the penalty where the ball lands. To me, it's on Aloiai. Very stupid to make contact with Johnson.
Well, I think they've gone a bit overboard on the charge because, and I think it's because of what's the halfback from Rabbitoh's name that got dropped? Lachlan Ilias. You see his injury? Yeah. So his injury was kind of the same, although not the same, because it was the opposing player running forward and Ilias's foot, his shin connected with the guy's knee, a raised knee, and snapped. It's gross. It's one of those gross ones. There's footage of it, like it's in the lower grades. And I think they've gone over the top on Aloiai because of that, because of the danger, because there's always been an outcry about attacking the legs after, Steve Price broke somebody. Like really badly broke somebody.
It's just like it's one thing to do it when they're going for a 1-point field goal from 10 or 15 metres out. It's another thing to do it when they're going for a 2-point field goal from over 40 metres out. Most of the time they're not going to kick that goal. Just let them kick and let them miss. And win the game.
Well, you can just run forward and wave your hands in the air and distract them, put pressure on them. You don't have to touch them. But it's just incidental contact, but it is against the rules. And so the charge is fair. And unfortunately, it ruined the game for...
Yeah, I think coaches are going to have to just smarten up a bit on that and, like you say, make it look like they're, getting in the way without actually making contact with the player. Because it's just not worth it when you're giving away a penalty where the ball lands and handing them 2 points. It cost them a competition point.
Yeah.
They should have won that game, Manly, and that incident cost them a point. They walk away with 1 point instead of 2
and
points.
That could ruin their season again.
It could. These things could be costly down the line.
Everyone's still super close, We are firming down the bottom with the Titans and the Rabbitohs on only 2 points, but the next group of people... nobody's won all their games. Everybody's lost at least one. And even there are teams like 3 to 8 have lost 2 of their games. So, that draw could really ruin Manly at the end of the season.
Yeah, so... I just think they need to be smarter on those 2-point field goals, the chasers. Is it really worth giving that penalty away? Clearly it's not.
No. Speaking of Manly, Josh Schuster's been given freedom to... So $800,000 sitting in reserve grades. He's been given permission... Well, he's been sacked, actually, as of now.
Because that's the thing. Apparently he's got a wait clause in his new contract hadn't even started yet. So he's got a wait clause and he hasn't met the criteria. So that's the thing. Manly are not even going to have to pay him out a cent, or
my feeling is
have to fork out anything.
My feeling is they actually realised it was that they'd overpaid and screwed their salary cap, and then looked for any excuse to do it.
That's the thing. When those figures were going around, Manly spending a huge amount on only 5 or 6 players in their cap. You sort of looked at that and you thought, Schuster, really? $800,000? Like, really?
Well, he was their 5'8" at the time. They didn't have one. Now they got Luke Brooks. Big mistake. Manly have historically ruined their cap. I think Josh Schuster is a good player. So people are saying, I heard some rumblings that there are some personal issues with why he wasn't able to meet his weight requirements and stuff like that, and why his form's been down. And if that can be resolved, then everything will be well, and he'll be back to his best. It's very funny. Some news reporter rang every club, and all 16 said, no, we don't want him. Some of them unequivocally, no, absolutely not, no interest at all. But then his agent rang all 16 clubs, and 4 teams have said, yeah, we're interested, what do we got? Now, the issue is that $800,000 contract, right? So I only learned this because of Zac Lomax and the whole Parramatta thing, because Parramatta were even considering if Zac Lomax was going to come play for the wing, they wouldn't be able to give, because he was on 800. Mm-hmm. The NRL have a rule about when players change clubs, the new club has to come close to their previous value, because the old club has valued them at this amount. And it's to avoid things like paying Darren Lockyer $200,000, you know?
But the issue with that is you're going to leave him out of a gig then because no one's going to want to pay anywhere near the $800,000.
It's a silly rule. It is really a silly rule.
For that reason, and it was interesting listening to Braithen Astor talking about this on NRL 360 the other night. Braithen Astor's a player agent himself, and he was saying that often, you know, everybody in life, they want the big money, don't they? But the downside to it is the expectations can be really high on you. And so this has been the issue for Schuster on $800,000, and he feels like the weight of the world's on his shoulders. Wouldn't you rather be on $300,000, not having anywhere near as much pressure, and just enjoying your footy more? And now I think Paul Kent and a few others mentioned the other night that now he probably needs to look at going to a Melbourne Storm under Craig Bellamy in a really good system like that one on, say, $300,000 a year, and just enjoy his football again and not have those expectations.
That's the thing. They might not be allowed to register him for $300,000 a year.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a terrible, stupid rule.
Yes.
Because some clubs...
leave him out of a job.
Some clubs have to pay overs. You know, they do. We've discussed it. Everyone's discussed it. Some, like the Tigers, Raiders, Dragons, Titans, are going to have to pay overs for people now. So that will value them higher than they're actually, like, worth. And then that player won't be able to go to another club like Melbourne, Broncos, whatever, where they'll be worth less simply because of the quality of roster that those other clubs have. Like, in my opinion, I think Josh Schuster should go to the Titans. You know, like he should just go there because that's a club that is in sore need of some star power. It'll be under Desi, who apparently has a relationship with the Schuster family. He'll be away from the Sydney spotlight. Yeah, he can go to Des Hasler and Des Hasler will hopefully be able to get him back to where he is. Yeah,
100%. You might be on the money there, John. It might be, I think... We might be looking at, you know, a club. Well, it's either probably a club like the Titans, as you're talking about, or maybe a Melbourne Storm, a really good, solid system down there they've got at the Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, it's all going to come down to whether he can get registered for the value. Can they drop him by much? Anyway, moving right along. In that night's Roosters game, we did a meme post about it. It was heaps funny. So... With just a minute to go, Knights were down by 2. And Kalen Ponga went on a line break. That was absolutely amazing. Ran all the way up the field and then was tackled very late, like just caught late by, I can't remember the Roosters player's name, their number 5, and held down for a really, really long time. Like a really, really, really long time.
Yeah, I think it was dragged down by Junior Pauga near the halfway line. Pauga appeared to have a second dip to hold Ponga down, with Angus Crichton also coming in late to slow things down there.
Yeah.
I thought it should have been a penalty. I do. I think they held him down too long.
Oh yeah, I was watching it. I was like, well, they've screwed that up. The Manly Knights are going to get their 2 points now, and then they'll tie it up. That's what I thought. And then there was no a little bit sus. That could be what's his face. The Ricky Stuart complaining about cheating.
Yeah. I do think they were hard done by the Knights, that's for sure. But we need to point this out again, and we do it often with this sort of thing. All that gives the Knights is a penalty goal attempt from 45 metres out, right?
Yeah.
So there's no guarantee. People love to jump to these conclusions and go, oh, if we got that penalty, we would have levelled the match, we would have done this, we would have done that. All it would have got them was a penalty goal shot from 45 metres out, which is hardly a gimme. And all that would have done would have levelled it at 22-all to send the game into extra time. So a lot, even if they were given that penalty, a lot still would have had to happen for the Knights to even draw level and send the game into extra time. So we need to just make that clear, point that out. I don't think it cost the Knights the game. I think they should have been given a penalty. But let's not go as far as to say that it cost them the game, because it didn't.
No, it definitely didn't cost them the game, but it was definitely a penalty.
Yes.
It was so obviously a penalty. Yes. I was really like, oh, God, 45 minutes out, he's going to kick a penalty and even this game up and it's going to go on point. But it didn't happen, and I was like, oh, all right. Well, they still had another play as well. Like, they still had another, I think even 2 more tackles. So, you know, they still could have gone for a, 45-metre 2-point field goal. Finally, in the news, just before we get to our fun times, during that game, actually, the first half, Kalen Ponga looked like he had torn a hamstring. And, of course, Joey Johns was upset and made a wild accusation.
Yeah. Yeah, so Andrew Johns was talking about, I think Ponga was grabbing at his hip, and Andrew Johns kept saying in commentary that Ponga was gone a number of times. He kept saying that in the Channel 9 commentary, and he was asking for the Knights to drag him off the field. But apparently... But the issue was that, well, if Ponga had come from the field, he would have cooled down and made the injury worse. It was one of those injuries where you want to keep it warm and everything. And a lot of people watching the coverage on Channel 9 were saying, well, Joey's, he's jumped to conclusions here, saying they need to take Ponga off without really knowing what the injury is. But to be fair to Joey, what I think the issue is sometimes, and look, to be honest, John, I don't watch the Channel 9 coverage. I watch Fox. I think Fox is a lot better. You avoid the ads.
Yep.
So I watch the Fox commentary. So to be honest, I don't know who Channel 9 have as their sideline reporter. I presume it's one of their reporters or it's an ex-player. It's either one of those. But anyway, what I actually was reading some interesting quotes from Eddie Maguire, the former Collingwood president in the AFL and celebrity himself. And he was talking about how when Channel 9 took the AFL rights off Channel 7 much earlier in this century, what they did was Channel 9 wouldn't have, your ex-player on the sideline. They actually got a doctor by the name of Peter Larkins on the boundary. And what he would do is because he was a doctor, a sports doctor, he'd be able to give an injury diagnosis on the players on the spot. And it added a lot to their... Maguire rightly felt like it added a lot to their coverage. And what my thoughts are, well, maybe to help someone like a Joey, maybe you need that doctor on the side so that, because it's a hard thing to do, even though Joey played for so long. It's still very difficult to be able to tell what injury the player has when you're just commentating up in the box. And, Joey, as I said, he played for a long time, but he's no doctor. So yeah. I think it would help if we had some NRL equivalent to this Peter Larkins, who the AFL had, who could maybe go on the sideline there and give those... even that NRL physio, the guy on Twitter, maybe they should look at giving him a sideline gig. And getting him to, to maybe give an injury diagnosis on the spot there. Maybe that's something that they could look at.
Yeah, it's just, it's always hard to know until they come off and they get looked at. And anyone on the sidelines only making it's not even an educated guess, it's just a guess. And you saw Ponga was hobbling around for ages, and then he went off and came back and had the game of his life. I like what they were saying on the radio. They were saying whatever they gave Kalen Ponga while he was off the field, give me some of that, because that woke him up. And so you can rip into Andrew Johns all you want, but it's the Knights, and he's always going to get worked up and not want the players to be injured or anything, and he's always going to say crazy things. Yeah,
I just think, to be fair to Joey there, I think he needs some help, and maybe they should look at getting that doctor presence on the sideline.
One of the things I like about Andrew Johns' commentary all the time, though, and it was really good when Matty Johns was there too, is they just say stuff that creates talking points. That's a thing. So, it's Andrew Johns will always say crazy stuff. Always, no matter what, and
he speaks his mind.
Yeah,
and he's earned the right to speak his mind.
You could tell he was worried. I guess I haven't heard. I can guess that he was worried because early in the season, Roosters were on top anyway. Probably didn't want Kalen Ponga to be injured throughout the next 6 to 8 weeks. So, if it was a hemi or a hip or whatever. But yeah, then when Kalen Ponga came back, it was after the halftime. It was crazy how good he played that second half. And that line break he did that, as we discussed, he didn't get the penalty for. He's funny because I think it's Vossi was commentating and said, this is where Kalen Ponga needs to step up or something. And then he didn't even get the ball. He didn't retrieve the ball from the kick. The ball was passed to him by his winger, and then he just cut through the line. I was like, dude, 40 minutes ago you were hobbling around. What's going on here? Yeah, I don't listen to Channel 9 either, man. I watch KO all the time. I only watch KO. I never ever watch Channel 9 except for State of Origin and the Grand Final.
Yeah, I only watch Channel 9 when I have to. Yeah. State of Origin, Grand Final. Yeah.
And just before we finish up with Rugby League, we have, honestly, guys, it's just our opinion. James Graham and Peter Fitzsimmons have been getting into a war of words over Peter Fitzsimmons' James Tedesco column.
Yes.
So he wrote a column in which he said James Tedesco should retire, medically retire due to concussions after his 10th concussion in his career. And James Graham has sparked up. They've had issues before, those guys, because Peter Fitzsimmons wrote about something to do with concussions before, and James Graham said he doesn't agree with it. We know what we're getting into and stuff. I just have to ask before we get your opinion. Does anybody like Peter Fitzsimmons?
Not me.
Any players, anyone, any ex-players, anything? I'm really curious as to.
This is a thing, and look, I mean, we all obviously listen to medical opinion on this subject. We're not going to, we're obviously not going to disregard medical opinion. It's very important on a subject like this one, of course. But I think that the problem with Peter Fitzsimmons is it's not the points some of the points he makes I don't agree with. But a lot of the time, it may not be the points that he makes that you disagree with. It's the way that he makes them. It's his tone that's completely off. I've read this quote that I've got quotes from this column that he's written as a retort to James Graham calling him a parasite. And he says this, Fitzsimmons, and I quote, he says, "As a parasite, I must be a very small one, and a pretty irrelevant one. As riding on concussion these days, as serious as I am on it, will be no more than half of 1% of my output, if that." Seriously, no more than half of 1% of my output? Are you kidding me? Have you got tickets on yourself that much that you think you've got that much output, Peter Fitzsimmons?
They already have a percentage for that. It's 0.5%.
Yeah.
Just so you know. So you know.
And then he goes on. That wasn't all he said that I had an issue with. He says, "What I genuinely feel for Graham is pity, mixed with rising concern at his ever more erratic nature." So he gives a low blow. He's saying that he thinks James Graham has these opinions because of an erratic nature. So what is he saying that James Graham has some problems now?
Graham.
What a low blow for Peter Fitzsimmons to say that about James Graham.
James Graham is one of the most well-spoken.
Yeah, you can't accuse him of having some condition.
High-level analytics guy that commentates.
How can he say that about James Graham when he doesn't know? He has no evidence that James Graham is suffering from any issues at the moment, and yet he says rising concern at his ever more erratic nature. How distasteful is that? And then he says, "Personally, if I was to hang my journalistic hat on any of the work I've done over the years, it's pushing ahead on the issue of concussion, of which I'm most proud." Hang my journalistic hat on any of the work I've done. He makes it all about him, Fitzsimmons. It's all about him. He doesn't make it about the argument. He makes it all about him. That's the issue with Peter Fitzsimmons.
Even when Gavin Robertson was on our podcast recently, when we asked him about Peter Fitzsimmons,
he had a good take on it.
Yeah, that's the thing. He didn't say anything bad, but it's the same thing. I just don't know anybody who I'm very confused about Peter Fitzsimmons' place in the sporting world.
Yeah, I think we're all very confused because he's an ex-rugby union player who's giving commentary on all these other sports. He said that Steve Smith shouldn't be an opener anymore. And now he's saying that James Tedesco should retire. He won't comment. He won't write columns about rugby union because he knows no one cares about it anymore. So now he knows he has to comment on sports that people actually care about. And another thing that he said, another quote from his column, he says, "Tedesco had 3 concussions in his first decade of playing. He's had 7 in the past 3 years. That may not alarm James Graham, but it seriously alarms the concussion specialists I have consulted. Okay, Peter, so maybe it should be those concussion specialists who tell James Tedesco whether or not he should retire, not you.
Yes.
And I think that's what James Graham was pointing out.
Yeah, well, that's what James Graham actually always says. It's up to the experts, and the guys get to play, and they know there is a risk, as you do, and there's no need to say that people should retire when you don't know. That's what James Graham always says. When you don't know, it's up to excuse me, Boyd Cordner, Jake Friend. They've both been medically retired due to concussions. That went through the player, the club, the league, the doctors. Those are the people that know. Those are the
people. So I think James Tedesco should listen to them and not a rugby union newspaper columnist who's writing about rugby league.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's honestly, guys, just our opinion. Our opinion is no one should listen to Peter Fitzsimons.
Yes.
Whatever. In other sporting news, yesterday was USC 300. It was the greatest and best event ever. There were 3 highlight moments, if you will. The first one was in Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje for the BMF belts. Max Holloway, he won 5 rounds. He was winning 5 rounds. And then when there was 10 seconds to go and the clacker went, he pointed to the middle of the ring and told Justin Gaethje, let's bang, and they banged. They just went wild at each other. It was amazing. I think Dana White called it, that's what the BMF belt is all about. It's about those what the fuck moments. And then with 2 seconds on the clock, Max Holloway caught Gaethje across the chin and knocked him out. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, I was there for the whole day. I watched the whole thing. The card opened at 8 o'clock in the morning with 2 ex-champions fighting each other. And the Weili Zhang versus Yan Zhaonan dual Chinese title was absolutely phenomenal as well. It was a back and forth and ended up being a decision, and Weili Zhang retained. But, Yan, her countrymen can take a lot of pride away from it because she won some of the moments, and that was it. She won some of the moments, but Weili Zhang is just an all-round fighter. And then in the final fight, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. Pereira is one of the scariest human beings on the planet. He actually got kicked in the groin in this, I think it was second round, whenever it was, kicked in the groin. And as the referee came in to call time, well, you get kicked in the groin in the MMA, you get 5 minutes recovery time. So as the ref came in to call a timeout, Alex Pereira held up his right hand and said no. And then 2 seconds later threw a solid left into Jamal Hill's chin and knocked him unconscious. It was the coolest thing ever. Most dead. I didn't even look. He just put his hand up and said no. And then walked forward and then bang, unconscious.
I wouldn't have wanted to be on the end of that.
No, it was like, wow. Straight after getting kicked in the groin. But yeah, it was really good. There's a bunch of highlights on the internet that you can watch, especially Max Holloway screaming at Gaethje to come into the middle and bang. And of course, Justin Gaethje, one of the baddest MFs in the world, said, all right, let's go. And then, the Alex Pereira knockout. That's going to be a highlight reel forever.
YouTube hit.
Yeah. But in the, we had the Jeremy Finlayson got his ban for the homophobic slur, and NRL set the precedent that homophobia is half as bad as racism. And in the end, AFL's followed suit. Yeah. But I also read there was a coach that used a homophobic slur in the AFL a few months ago.
Alistair Clark.
Yeah, only got a 2-match ban. So at least what they've done really is, because previously they were saying that homophobia is 1/3 as bad as racism, they've caught up. And thank God for the arbiters of morality in the world that we have, these sporting associations that can tell us all that homophobia is half as bad as racism.
Yeah, so just to run people through a bit of background on this. Yeah, so Port Adelaide forward Jeremy Finlayson suspended for 3 games for making a homophobic slur towards an Essendon player. That's the one that's just happened. Should also point out what John was referring to just before. Adelaide Crows star Taylor Walker back in 2021 was banned for 6 games by the AFL for making a racist comment. So the AFL, in this instance, have gone 3 games Finlayson for a homophobic slur, 6 games Taylor Walker for a racism slur. In the NRL this year, earlier in the year, the Las Vegas game, Spencer Leniu banned for 8 weeks for making a racist comment to Ezra Mam. That was after in 2022, Warriors winger Marcelo Montoya received a 4-game ban for the use of a homophobic slur. So in these instances I've just read out, both the AFL and the NRL have been aligned in that you get half as much of a suspension for a homophobic comment as you do for a racist
The AFL was behind the NRL up until this week. They've caught up. They've come into the modern world in which homophobia is half as bad as... They used to think it was 1/3 as bad, but now we know that it's half as bad. Thanks to the NRL, we now know. It used to be 1/3 as bad, now it's half as bad. Once again, absolutely ridiculous. Absolute bullcrap. They all should have been banned for 8 weeks or 6 weeks in the AFL, if that's whatever the ban is, and that's it. They set the ban.
If you're going to take a strong stand on racism, that's fine. That's completely fine. But you need to acknowledge that there are other comments that can be made that are equally as offensive, and they should carry the equal punishment.
Exactly. There's a lot still happening in tennis, which is fun. I saw Daniel Medvedev have a big... Whoa.
There's always a blow up somewhere, isn't there?
But Novak Djokovic is... he's had a tanty. He's really not handling the crowd at all anymore.
Not having a good season this year, Mr. Djokovic. Told a fan to shut the F up in Monte Carlo. So just lashing out at a fan again. He really he doesn't have a good relationship with the fans of the game, does he? This is the greatest player in the history of the sport. But he continues to be maligned by the fans of tennis.
It just keeps getting worse.
Yeah, and so knocked out of the Monte Carlo Masters, which is a big lead-in event to the French Open, knocked out by Casper Ruud in the semi-finals. He still hasn't made a final this year, Djokovic. Can you believe it? We're in April, and this is Novak Djokovic, and he hasn't made a final this year. Extraordinary.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Extraordinary. Ruud, the number 10 ranked Norwegian, beat the world number 1 6-4, 1-6, 6-4. It's his first winning 6 attempts against Djokovic, who's won 24 Grand Slam titles. Yeah, things taking an ugly turn in that deciding set. Djokovic missed a regulation forehand while down 3-4, turned his attention to an individual sitting behind the baseline and unleashed an expletive spray. Things not going well for Novak Djokovic at the moment at all. And you are starting to wonder now. Now we have had a bit of a chunk of time where things are not going his way, and at his age, he turns 37 next month. So you can't help but wonder, is this just a blip on the radar? Is it just a glitch? Or is it the beginning of the end for the best player of all time?
We're a third of the way through the year when he's got the French Open next month. And I think
that's going to tell us a lot, because I think the way it's looking more and more like Nadal's not going to play in the French Open. And I think we're at a point now where even if Nadal were to play at the French Open, it's not going to be the Nadal of old. The 14-time French Open winner on display. It's going to be a Nadal who unfortunately... just the little tennis Nadal's played, he's just going to have real difficulty getting back to playing at his best level in such a short space of time. So I think we are going to find out a lot about Djokovic going into the French Open. I think he will go in as the favourite. But if he slips up again at the French Open, well, then you are really going to start to wonder.
Yeah.
I know that Wimbledon, again, will be just after that. So after the French Open and Wimbledon, we're going to know a lot more about where Djokovic is really at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's had slumps before, but this is the end. That's
the thing. It's his age. You can't help but look at the age. 37 next month. That's the thing. At some point, he can't keep winning forever. Even him as the great player that he is, the best of all time. You can't keep winning forever. Eventually, your age will catch up with you. And we may have reached that point with Djokovic.
Yeah. So over the weekend, O.J. Simpson passed away. He was this is sport related. He's an ex-NFL player.
Yes, he used to play in the NFL.
And an actor, alleged murderer.
Yes. Checkered history.
LA Times released a obituary for him, and bizarrely, thought he was Donald Trump.
Yeah. It's an odd one, isn't it? So, the Los Angeles Times has been mocked for an excruciating error in its O.J. Simpson obituary after suggesting that former President Donald Trump had served the accused murderer's prison sentence. The quote from the article, from the obituary is, long before the city woke up on a fall morning in 2017, Trump walked out of Lovelock Correctional Centre outside Reno, a free man for the first time in 9 years, the paper wrote, somehow mistaking the presidential nominee for the disgraced ex-NFL player. The obituary added, he didn't go far, moving into a 5,000 square foot home in Vegas with a Bentley in the driveway. They attributed this to Donald Trump, not O.J. Simpson. And you can imagine that the LA Times are very red-faced making this blunder, and a lot of people caught onto it and said, well, look, you're even going this far to I guess, criticise Donald Trump, putting his name where it shouldn't
be. They hate Donald Trump that much that they'll chuck his name in an obituary for O.J. Simpson. Is just a bizarre, even accidentally. Yeah. But that just kind of talks to the mindset of America right now and the mass American media, where they will just, whatever bad is happening, they'll just want to slam Donald Trump even accidentally.
That's the thing. This is a big newspaper, the LA Times. They should not be making mistakes like that.
Don't they have editors?
It should have gone through the editors. Yeah. For that to get through and not be picked up. That's a massive mistake, and it looks terrible on the LA Times.
And finally, in other sports news, the Masters, it's the Golf Masters.
Yes.
We have a new Tiger Woods in town. Scotty Scheffler has won for the second time.
Yes, one is winning the Masters for the second time. That's right, a dominant 4-shot win in the US Masters this morning at Augusta National. He's reinstated his status as the best golfer in the world. He's the world number one, Scheffler. He was the short price favourite and the front runner after shooting 6 under in the first round. He held ground in the middle rounds and had 5 birdies in the last round. That's where he really kicked away from the field with that victory. So, really well done to Scotty Scheffler. Congratulations. Great win.
No one was watching because they were all watching UFC 300. And then we got some social media blower-uppers. Obviously, we haven't actually had any for a little while because we've been doing a lot of guest podcasts.
It's hard for us to do them when we've got a guest.
Yeah. But don't worry, I'm going to put together some of Craig Gower's ones for when Craig Gower is here next time.
I was going to mention to you, I think the General had a comment for Craig Gower that we
got it saved.
Dig up. Yeah.
So on the Mitchell Pearce podcast, thanks again for Pearcey for appearing, absolute legend.
Yes.
Mitulala8857 said, great podcast and conversation, guys, especially how the game has changed with the halves and some of the rule changes too. Good to see Mitchell doing well. He's my favourite player. Looking forward to see what he does in the future.
Thank you very much for that. That's very kind feedback.
It was an awesome podcast. And he'll be on again, so we'll make sure we mention you to him, Mitulala8857. On episode 65, we had some Latrell Mitchell discussion and we had 3 comments about it. So again, I just want to reiterate, there's a lot more comments, but we're only doing the ones of value now because there's too many to go through. Anthony Cowles 3153 said, we were referring when talking about the expletive-ridden things, interview, couldn't believe my ears. First game in the season and Motormouth is on about the game he had nothing to do with. I knew at the moment that South's season was finished before it started. Cheers.
Yeah, that's a reference to Latrell Mitchell, obviously. That's a reference to Latrell Mitchell commenting on the Ezra Mam, Spencer Leniu saga.
Yeah, it's just one of the many... Because episode 65 was only last week, so it's just one of the many things we talked about, and that's the Latrell every week. The General, is Dan finally coming around to Robbo being a fraud? Yes, General.
Thanks for your comment, General. Look, I'm not going that far. I'm not going to call somebody who's been a 3-time premiership coach a fraud. But what I would say, though, and what I did say, which I think the General has commented on, what I did say was I do believe that since 2020, the Roosters have underachieved. They've had a very good roster. They've always recruited well in that time since then. And I think given the strong roster and the strong recruits they have had, that, in my opinion, they have underachieved in that time. But no, I'm not calling him a fraud. He has won 3 premierships. He's a 3-time premiership winning coach. But yes, General, I do think that he is underachieving at the moment and has underachieved in the last 4 years.
I think, General, you need to keep working on Dan and me because I also agree with Dan. I don't think Trent Robinson is a fraud. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. No,
it's too far to call somebody. Yeah. You can't call someone who's coached 3 premiership wins a fraud. You can't do it.
Yeah, and I also think that even though the Roosters have underperformed in the last 3 years, obviously the last 3 years have been the Panthers. Like, nobody can perform better than the Panthers in the last 3 years. So it's hard for every other club in the last 3 years to win a premiership with the Panthers dominating so heavily. But yeah, like last year, the Roosters were especially bad given the roster they had, and we'll see how they go this year. They're not doing very well compared to what roster they have.
Yeah, I mean, they did have a win on the weekend.
Yeah, against the Knights.
But I think that only I think they're 3-3. Yes, they're 3-3, so they're sitting just outside the top 8. I think they're a better team than 3-3. I think with the roster they've got, they should be doing better than 3-3. So I think it is a fair comment to say that they are underachieving.
Yep. Finally, Vic Sofio 5892 on episode 65. Latrell should look at the interview that Lara Pitt did with CNK after the Warriors game.
Did you see that interview? It was a really good interview. Sean's Nickel Cockstad looked like he just looked like he was in love with the game in that interview with Lara Pitt.
Well, he's a legend.
And so that's a really good comment by Vic Sofios 5892. I think I've got that right. Yep. Really good comment. It was a really good interview that Lara Pitt did, and that CNK, that was somebody who you could tell loves their job. Loves the fact that they're playing professional football for a living. Loves the fact that they're doing what they love for a living. So well done CNK and well done Lara Pitt on that interview.
Yep. And then finally, housekeeping before we finish up. In upcoming podcasts, we have Craig Gower coming sometime this week. It's meant to be Wednesday night. I got to see if we can delay it till the next day. But if I can't, I can't. It's just too bad. This has been booked in for a while, so Gowie will be in on Wednesday. Don't forget to sign up to SmartB for the tip of the day and customize your notifications. Soon there will be the ability to customize your homepage as well, so you'll only see news and information for the sports you know and love. The SmartB Racing Update is released every Friday. It's our sister, brother, cousin podcast about racing with Bryce and Lewis. And follow at SmartB app on all the socials. And back a winner on all the socials if you love racing. Most of our tips and stuff come through Back a Winner. You can access them on the SmartB website, but the Back a Winner social media is more focused to racing if racing is your thing. Cool. Have a good few days, and we'll see you on Wednesday or Thursday with Gowie.
Thanks, mate. See you next time.